Hi, my name is John, and this is Business Update. In this week's episode, we'll be talking about how AAA games, top tier game developers, which produces, some of the best games that we play, are certainly disappointing many gamers, even I. How far have they fallen from grace in terms of, taking advantage of their popularity, thinking that we expect them to develop, publish tremendous games, which they have done in the past, but sad to say their priorities have shifted. I mean, in terms of being greedy, in terms of being able to generate maximum revenue at any cost. Now, obviously, if you piss off your consumers, which is the gamers themselves, well, you get varying results. And one of the popular games at the past that has been in turmoil is Bethesda's Fallout 76 debacle. And then you also have City Project Red's Cyberpunk 2077. Now, it doesn't end there. I think those companies didn't learn and others have followed suit. And now in today's focus, in today's discussion, we'll be primarily focusing on Halo's Infinite's significant decrease of their live service game, which is, in the article that we're going to read in a bit, mentions that it's part of the cycle of the live service game, which I tend to disagree with, which we'll see in a bit why. And then the latest game, which Sony, which I'm very disappointed. They could do tremendous, but the fact that they're willing to forego the gamer's experience just to be able to nickel and dime with the microtransactions here. So anyway, so let's let's start here with Halo Infinite first. So in the case of Halo Infinite, which was launched, supposed to be launched by the time the Xbox Series X, along with the what do you call this? PlayStation 5 console was to be released way back in 2020, during the pandemic. But they decided to postpone it or delay it so that they could polish up the game, which actually at the time they mentioned it, I commended them rather than, see what happened with Cyberpunk 2077, right? I mean, full of bugs, and then, they try to sell that product. I mean, kudos for their marketing department for creating a lot of hype, but at the end of the day, if the game is not as advertised, people will be pissed off. And anyway, a year later, or now it's almost 2 years later, problems have arose within the Halo Infinite community in terms of how bad the service has been. Now, obviously, you can expect little nuances or problems within a live service, bugs and so forth. But actually, to begin with, I think I tend to disagree. If you cannot publish a fully formed, fully fledged game without any major bugs, then you shouldn't be publishing it in the first place. But I may be a minority in that aspects here. Anyway, so according to TechRadar.com, it mentions here that uh, Halo Infinite's player is losing so fast that uh, according to the writer here, that it's a no biggie for a live serve, which is part of the cycle here, that it ebbs and flows, as he mentions here. But I tend to disagree because obviously if it's a really popular game and you provide content, ongoing content, people would continue to play it. I mean, a good example is Elder Scrolls Skyrim, right? I mean, it's been more than 10 years since it was launched. I mean, people still play it. Sad to say, I haven't finished the game, but it's been ported to several consoles and PCs, and people are still playing because they find joy in a tremendous game. As long as you provide them value, gamers, people would, continue to support it. But if you don't provide a compelling case or gaming content, obviously people or gamers in this case would leave in droves. So let's read further. So you have Xbox and PC players leaving Halo Infinite. So so it's supposed to be that the Halo franchise is the main marketing tool for the Xbox platform. That's not a good sign if your main product is not doing really well in your own platform. Anyway, It mentions here that Halo Infinite has lost a significant number of active players since its launch to last year. Now, obviously, it did really well because there was a lot of hype expectations of, what's the next iteration for Master Chief. So a lot of people were highly anticipating playing the latest iteration. Actually, when they delayed the launch, I mean, they were concerned that the game that they're producing was not up to par to what it was in the past year. Anyway, reading further, it mentions on PC, Halo's Infinite player count has fallen dramatically since its launch. So peaking at around 30,000 daily concurrent players on Steam. But when it was launched way back in November, there were as high as 250,000 players. So that's a precipitous drop off. 90%. That's not so small number. So no matter what explanation or justifications they may say, even in the article, that you must be doing something bad if a lot of players are leaving looking for better games that they could play, whether it's Elder Ring or even Sifu or other types of games that you prefer. And the question is, what led to this point? I mean, is it a by accident, or is it a decision that the company decided that they would, you know, let it be, hoping that players would still support the game because of its popularity here? Anyway, it's a similar story with regards to the Xbox. So it's not just in PC. So Halo Infinite has fallen out of the Xbox top 5 most played games here. So meaning it's not looking good if your main flagship game is not doing really well. And actually, if we were to look in the top best games for Xbox platform, let's see here, of all time, you can see here you have Control at number 10. Fortnite, which is not even an Xbox native game. Gears 5, yes. You have Grand Theft Auto, which is exclusive for the longest time for PlayStation. Then you have Minecraft, okay, and Assassin's Creed, not necessarily exclusive. Then Apex Legends. Then you have Metal Gear Solid, which is from PlayStation also. And lastly, Red Dead Redemption 2 and The Witcher 3. And if you notice in those rankings from 10 to first, it doesn't mention anything anywhere close to Halo's franchise. I think it's somewhere in the top 20, I think. So, meaning their game is, I mean, it's a good first person shooter. I mean, I enjoyed following the storyline, the story for Master Chief, but you know, the gamers have spoken in terms of whether they like the game or they don't, and you have no one else to blame but the developers and the gaming company themselves for focusing shifting their focus on other not so compelling case for gamers and whatnots here. And it's kind of disappointing. I mean, obviously, Halo is a very popular game, and it should grow in terms of popularity, similar how Nathan Drake's Uncharted series is at an all-time high popularity, and in terms of players being able to play the game. Now, in the article, it mentions here that a player's exodus shouldn't be as surprising, citing that part of playing these types of game, a multiplayer game, is there's a glut of bugs and glitches affecting gameplay, matchmaking, graphics, and more. But I beg to disagree with what's the name of the one who wrote the article here. I beg to disagree with Mr. Baines regarding, we expect more. Think about it. If you were to buy a automobile or even a smartphone that has full of bugs, no one would buy that product, and we expect more. And it's only in the gaming industry where obviously you can buy digital games and physical games that they would say that there are issues that will just patch it up later so that we can get it fixed. So if it's not yet fully fixed, why sell it in the first place? So meaning trying to find ways to circumvent the process so that they can nickel and dime people or make a lot of money. Case in point with Cyberpunk 2077, a lot of pre-orders and a lot of disappointed gamers after they bought the game, which was terrible at launch. Now, he goes on to mention, although plenty of these problems were fixed in good time, and are par, of course, with any AAA multiplayer shooter at launch. Some persisted in months, which is another issue altogether, meaning we should not accept the new norm because of minor issues. It should be if they're going to launch a game, it should be fixed. It should be 100% working condition so that the gamers can focus more on the gaming experience if it's a tremendous game or not worrying the walls are missing, the characters are flying, all of the nonsense that's not part of the actual gameplay here. uh, and it goes on to mention that last week, the developer 343 successfully released a patch to solve the big team battle matchmaking issue. So, meaning it was only recently that they were able to fix it. So, why did you even launch the game? Not even pre-tested. Did quality control? I mean, that's one of the main frustrations for me seeing these types of issues proliferate. That you know making terrible games like EA, the sports franchises that they've been publishing for quite some time, and now live service games that thinking that it's because of the name itself would captivate a lot of gamers. And one of the debacle that recently happened is the Avengers live service games. I mean, obviously the IP is a popular one, but if the game is terrible, no one would actually play it, especially if it's making you spend actual money to be able to upgrade or make cosmetic changes within the game, which is which we'll be talking about also with another game, which is Gran Turismo. Kind of disappointing. A big fan of the game, and I played the original games 1 and 2 in the earlier iteration of the PlayStation console, and which I found a lot of joy in playing those games. But sad to say, times have changed. Obviously, their priorities have changed, trying to earn that extra buck and not making it an enjoyable game, which I think many companies have forgotten. At the end of the day, if there's no gamers who's buying the game, then there will be no more profit for the developers themselves. And I think they have forgotten them in one way or another. And the thing here is, when you pay for a full game, you expect to enjoy through and through, not expect them to pay extra more, unless they're offering an extra value or additional value for the game that you're playing, which I highly doubt it, because other games are able to sell you the game like Zelda, the Breath of the Wild. I mean, the content is fully formed. No microtransactions. You can play to your heart's content. That's why I like the RPG type. And even now, the recent launch of Elden Ring has been very popular, which we'll be talking about also sometime in the future regarding how successful they are. I mean, even the publishers themselves from software were surprised in terms of how big the game has become because of what has preceded them, the terrible games that was preceded. Now, this is what gamers want, and obviously, if you give what gamers want, whether it's games, movies, whatever types of contents or product, people would buy it in droves. I mean, even I mean, I enjoyed the game. Good example is Hollow Knight. It's an indie game. I played it in PC, in console, PlayStation, and even in my Switch. So I paid 3 times for the same game. So if I enjoy, I would pay gladly. But if it's not a tremendous game, I mean, I won't even waste my time spending, an iota of my money, hard-earned money, to play those games. Anyway, what's fun here, the game came under fire for its punishing battle pass progression system, which required players to complete sets of challenges for XP. It raised a number of problems for players who found that they were unable to complete some challenges and were unhappy with the slow pace at which rewards were unlocked. So, which means to say they want to encourage you to maybe skip the difficulty by purchasing actual use currency, by paying actual money in the real world, which is, I think, it's okay if you want to give them the option. I think there are some gamers who'd like to skip that difficulty so that they can share the contents online. But for others, I mean, if you provide the option, I think it would be fair. I mean, not that I'm agreeing with what those companies are doing nowadays, and make it so that the progression should be as it comes naturally. It's just similar to how normal gameplay works in a game, how you progress, and then you should be rewarded accordingly. Not make it so difficult stifling, irritating that after hours of gameplay, you're only, let's say, leveling up to 1 to 2 levels. And then here's the option. If you were to purchase this item, you can level up to level 5 or level 10 or even higher with just spending $5-10 worth of your money or even more, which is kind of irritating. So obviously that's what they're driving you to make that purchase, which is obviously for me, I will not be coerced into that action here. And it goes on to mention here, other issues have cropped up, such as excessively costly microtransactions, as I mentioned, in the in-games, Infinite's in-game shop, which is, another discussion altogether. I mean, look at Spider-Man, from Insomniac, right? I mean, they provided a tremendous game. The skins that the character, you can change it by sheer gameplay, and look at the sales it generated. That's why they came out with Miles Morales version, which should have been an update or an expansion, not a fully fledged game. But that's another discussion altogether. But gamers really appreciate that, and can make the gaming publisher a boatload of money here. Anyway, it goes on to say here, you also have mandatory cosplay that requires Xbox user to play against PC gamers. So obviously they want to leverage that popularity that it's a multi-platform, which is, why would I even play the dreaded online multiplayer content for completing the game, which is kind of irrelevant, unnecessary. It's just, I don't know if those developers have considered, have you tried playing those platinum games, if it's even practical or feasible or even logical, so that making it more difficult would promote your game, that it's an ideal game. Obviously for completionists, it would deter many players to enjoy the whole game, which is counterintuitive, right? You want to make it easy for game, reward gamers for achieving certain threshold, and if you're able to complete the game, what's the reward? I mean, even some games make it so difficult that the reward is nothing. You just finish the game, which is kind of disappointing. That's why I don't even bother completing the game 100%. I mean, finishing the storyline and playing to my heart's content. Anyway, uh it goes on to say that the absence of classic Halo game modes like King of the Hill, so removing certain aspects of the game that made them popular, is kind of disappointing. You have Infection, Griffball has also rubbed some players the wrong way, while promise of Forge, custom player map maker mode, and campaign co-op coming sometime later this year is proving too long a wait for eager fans. So meaning, if you disappoint the fans, you're going to lose them out quickly. That's why it's no wonder that 90% of the gamers, online has already shifted to a different type of game, which I'm assuming it's Elden Ring. I mean, there's only a few games here that you can consider. Actually, another issue that you would consider, another game that is on the Sony PlayStation platform, is Gran Turismo 7 here. So, according to GameSpot.com, the Gran Turismo 7 continues to be review bomb on Metacritic. Now, one of the main issues that's, I have taken issue with the how, Sony has done this service to the gaming community, right? I mean, they allowed the game to be reviewed by the gaming community, but they neglected to include the microtransactions, which they were going to include in the full, once the game was allowed to be downloaded or purchased by the gaming community. So obviously they wanted to circumvent the process to get a higher review, but guess what? The actual gaming community, saw for what they did, the manipulation that they did, and review bombed their game, which is even worse than what Battlefield 2042 was able to achieve. So meaning, those dirty tactics will do you no good, and obviously it will not work even in the long run here. I mean, if I'm a reviewer of games in the future, I would hold off. Obviously you missed out, releasing the reviews ahead of the launch of the game. But I think, everyone has to be more aware of what the companies are doing. I mean, installing patches later also that they can circumvent certain tactics, that they won't be caught cheating or lying to the customer's face here. But anyway, so let's dive deeply here. So players are really not happy with the latest game in the long-running Gran Turismo series. So again, manipulation tactics just to be able to coerce them to pony up extra money so that the company would pay or generate more money or revenue. And what's the frustrating part here? You already paid full money for the game, and shouldn't it stop from there? I mean, I know they want to earn, which is they're allowed to, but this is going way beyond, just making revenue. And if it pisses me off, I won't support the game anymore. Not that I've been buying their recent games, so even more compelling to not purchase their games moving forward. And I think it should be a stark reality or learning experience for many publishing company, which they're still not getting the point that if you do this service to your consumers, gamers at that, this is the reality that you will get from your community. And I don't know how long before they would realize that your revenue is tied up to your consumers or gamers playing your game, and not just playing one game but playing other games in the future that you're going to publish. And if you piss off the plethora, the thousands, hundreds of thousands of gamers, or even millions of gamers worldwide, well, it's going to affect your bottom line in the future eventually, right? So I don't know. Hopefully they could learn from this experience and improve their ways, change their ways, so to speak, right? I mean, we're not asking a lot. I mean, obviously they're greedy comes to the picture, which is kind of disappointing if you think about it. I mean, at the time when I was still playing the original versions, the earlier versions, iterations of Gran Turismo, wherein they expect you to play. If you play more, we'll give you more freebies, more cars, more options, more design, so you don't have to pay any amount of money. I mean, earn experience, so to speak. Or if you beat certain races, certain courses, certain driving modes, and if you're able to accomplish it, they will reward you even further. I think I was able to get a supercar by the time I reached expert level. I think at the time, I think there was a licensing level at the time, and I was able to enjoy it. I think that's how games should be. They should reward you by playing the game as it's intended to be. But if you try to add a different flavor, I think you should give the players or gamers an option whether they want to skip that hard grinding and versus the actual playing. But you cannot circumvent the process by making the grinding so hard so that they will be forced, not necessarily enticed, which obviously, if you understand human behavior, if you force someone to do something they don't like, it will irritate a lot of people. And if word gets around, this is what happens to you. Even Sony has to apologize for their uh, manipulative tactic here. And it's not a long-term strategy that's going to win out for both the company, Sony, and the publisher themselves. Anyway, I think I've said enough. Hopefully, they'll make some headways. Hopefully, other companies are looking at as to what those big publishers, AAA game publishers are doing, and what not to do, and what to do that's best for the gaming community as well as for their company here. Anyway, that concludes our discussion for today. Even more heated than usual, no? But anyway, I leave the link in the description below if you want to check out the full article on today's topic. As always, I'll see you again next week, next Wednesday, for more business update. As always, I'll see you then. Take care.